I heard my father's laughter before I heard the words that would change everything. It was the kind of laugh that cuts through a crowded restaurant, the kind that makes strangers turn their heads. And when I looked up from my plate, I saw him leaning back in his chair at our family dinner, his face red with amusement, pointing at me like I'd just told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "Your sister earned everything on her own, Rachel," he said, loud enough for the entire table to hear. "Unlike you." The wine glasses stopped clinking. My mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My sister Melissa sat across from me, her eyes down, but I could see the small smile playing at the corner of her lips. And me? I just leaned back in my chair and smiled. Because this time, I knew something they didn't. Let me take you back 6 months, to when I still believed that hard work and dedication would eventually make my father see me. My name is Rachel Foster, and I'm 32 years old. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Big yard, nice cars, family dinners every Sunday. But inside those walls, there was an invisible line drawn down the middle, and I was always on the wrong side of it. Melissa is my older sister by 3 years. She's beautiful, charming, and has always been the center of my father's universe. When we were kids, her artwork went on the fridge with magnets. Mine went in the recycling bin. Her report cards got framed. Mine got a nod and a "that's nice, honey." I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I'd prove my worth through success. I went to college on a partial scholarship, worked 2 jobs to cover the rest, and graduated with honors in business administration. Melissa? She dropped out after 2 semesters, moved back home, and started what my father called her creative journey. If this story hits home, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. You're not alone in this. I moved to Chicago after graduation, started working at a marketing firm, and spent 5 years climbing my way up to senior account manager. I bought my own apartment, paid off my student loans, and built a life I was proud of. Every Christmas, every birthday, I'd come back to Denver and try to share my achievements with my family. My father would smile politely and say, "That's wonderful, Rachel. Melissa just launched her new lifestyle blog. She's got almost 10,000 followers now." The real story starts last March, when my father called me out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon. "Rachel," he said, his voice warm in a way that immediately made me suspicious. "I need to talk to you about something important." I was in my office, halfway through a presentation deck, but I closed my laptop. My father never called me during work hours. "What's going on, Dad?" "It's about the family business," he said. My father owns Foster Commercial Properties, a real estate investment company he built from the ground up. It's worth about $8 million, with properties scattered across Colorado and Wyoming. He'd always said he'd pass it down to his children someday, but he'd never actually discussed the details. "I'm thinking about succession planning," he continued. "I'm 67 now, and your mother's been on me about retirement. I want to make sure everything's handled properly." My heart started beating faster. Was this it? Was he finally going to acknowledge my business degree, my years of corporate experience, my actual qualifications? "I'd like you to come home next month," he said. "I'm having a family meeting to discuss the transition. It's important that you're here." I booked the flight that same day. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in my father's home office, the same room where he'd built his empire. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and walls covered with photos of properties he'd developed. Not a single photo of me. 3 of Melissa. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best business suit, carrying a leather portfolio with notes I'd prepared. I'd spent the last month researching succession strategies, tax implications, and management structures. I was ready. Melissa showed up 20 minutes late, wearing yoga pants and holding a green smoothie. My father didn't seem to notice. He hugged her like she'd just returned from war, then gestured for us both to sit down. "Girls," he started, and I was 32 years old but still being called a girl. "I've made some decisions about the company's future." He slid a folder across the desk. I opened it first, scanning the legal documents inside. My hands started shaking before I reached the second page. "I'm naming Melissa as primary inheritor and future CEO of Foster Commercial Properties," he said, his voice filled with pride. "She's shown real interest in the business lately, and I think she's ready for this responsibility." The room tilted. "Dad, Melissa doesn't have any business experience. She's never worked in real estate. She doesn't even have a college degree. Tap that like button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family." He frowned at me like I'd insulted him personally. "Your sister has vision, Rachel. She understands people. That's worth more than any piece of paper." "I have a business degree," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "I've managed million-dollar accounts. I know commercial real estate. I've been working in corporate environments for nearly a decade." "And that's wonderful," my mother chimed in from the doorway, where she'd been standing silently. "But you already have your own career in Chicago. Melissa needs this opportunity." Melissa finally spoke up, her voice soft and sweet. "I've actually been learning a lot from Dad. I think I could really make a difference." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw nothing but empty confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from never being told no, never having to prove yourself, never wondering if you're good enough. "This isn't fair," I said. My father's expression hardened. "Life isn't fair, Rachel. And frankly, I'm disappointed in your attitude. This is a family decision, and it's already been made." I went back to Chicago that night and did something I'd never done before. I stopped trying to earn my father's approval. Instead, I started digging. My father's company wasn't publicly traded, but it wasn't exactly private either. He had investors, partners, and most importantly, public records. Property deeds, LLC filings, tax assessments, all available if you know where to look. I spent my evenings after work searching through county records, cross-referencing business filings, and building a picture of Foster Commercial Properties that my father probably thought nobody would ever see. And I found something interesting. Actually, I found something devastating. Over the last 2 years, someone had been quietly funneling money out of the company's operating accounts. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, but escalating over time. In the last 6 months alone, almost $200,000 had vanished into personal accounts. The transactions were sloppy, barely disguised as consulting fees and contractor payments. Someone who didn't know what they were doing. Someone who thought they'd never get caught. I pulled the account numbers and traced them. They led to a personal checking account registered to Melissa and Foster. My sister had been embezzling from our father's company. I could have gone to my father immediately, but I'd learned something over the years. Evidence without context is just noise. And if I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I hired a private investigator named Thomas Chen, a former forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud. I met him at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago and slid a folder across the table with everything I'd found. "Can you verify this?" I asked. He looked through the documents for 10 minutes without saying a word, then finally looked up at me. This is textbook embezzlement. Whoever did this wasn't even trying to hide it. How much total? Based on what I'm seeing here. Probably close to 300,000 over 2 years. But I'd need access to the full company records to be certain. Can you get them? He smiled. I can get anything that's legally obtainable. Give me 3 weeks. Comment below if you've ever had to become your own detective in a family situation. Sometimes we have to do the hard work ourselves. Thomas was thorough. He pulled bank records, interviewed vendors who'd supposedly been paid for work they never did, and even tracked down a contractor whose name had been forged on invoices. Every piece of evidence pointed back to Melissa. But there was more. The lifestyle blog my father was so proud of? It was failing. She had bought most of her followers, and her engagement rate was less than 1%. The fancy apartment she'd just moved into in downtown Denver? Paid for with embezzled money. The new car, the designer clothes, the luxury vacations she posted about on Instagram? All funded by theft. My sister hadn't earned anything. She'd stolen it. And my father had been so blinded by his golden child that he'd never noticed. I waited until I had everything. Every bank statement, every forged invoice, every piece of evidence bound in a clean folder with tabs and highlights. Then I called my father. Dad, I said, keeping my voice warm. I've been thinking about what you said. About Melissa taking over the company. I was hurt at first, but I understand now. She's family, and family comes first. I could hear the relief in his voice. I'm glad you're being mature about this, Rachel. It means a lot. I'd like to take everyone out to dinner, I said. A proper celebration for Melissa's new role. My treat. Somewhere nice. He practically glowed through the phone. That's very generous of you. I made reservations at the Capitol Grill in Denver for the following Saturday night. Private room, excellent wine list, and most importantly, enough space for what I had planned. That brings us back to the beginning, to the moment my father laughed and said those words. Your sister earned everything on her own, Rachel. Unlike you. We were seated at a large round table, my parents, Melissa and her boyfriend Derek, and me. The appetizers had just arrived, and my father had been giving a speech about Melissa's accomplishments. Her vision, her dedication, her natural business instinct. I'd sat there quietly, nodding, smiling, waiting for the perfect moment. When he finished with that line, with that laugh, I reached down and pulled out the folder I'd been keeping in my bag. Actually, Dad, I said, my voice calm and clear, I have something to show everyone. I slid the folder to the center of the table. My father's smile faltered. Rachel, this isn't the time for. Open it, I said. He looked at my mother, then at Melissa, then back at me. Something in my expression must have warned him, because his hand shook slightly as he reached for the folder. The room went silent as he opened it and started reading. I watched his face change. Confusion first, then shock, then a deep red flush that started at his collar and worked its way up to his forehead. What is this? He whispered. That's a comprehensive financial audit of Foster commercial properties for the last 2 years, I said. Specifically focusing on unauthorized withdrawals from operating accounts. $317,000, to be exact. Melissa had gone completely white. Hit that subscribe button right now because you need to hear what happened next. There must be some mistake, my father said, but his voice had lost its confidence. There's no mistake, I said. I hired a forensic accountant. Every transaction is documented. The money was funneled into a personal account belonging to Melissa. She's been embezzling from your company for 2 years. Derek, Melissa's boyfriend, pushed his chair back slightly, like he was trying to distance himself from the explosion he could feel coming. My mother grabbed the folder and started flipping through it, her hands trembling. Melissa, is this true? My sister finally found her voice. I can explain. I was going to pay it back. I just needed. You needed what? My father said, his voice dangerously quiet. $300,000? I was building my brand, Melissa said, and she actually sounded indignant. The blog, the followers, the lifestyle content, that all costs money. I was going to turn it into something real, something profitable, and then I would have paid you back with interest. You stole from me, my father said. I borrowed. You stole from me. His voice filled the private room. You forged invoices. You created fake vendor accounts. You committed fraud. I pulled out another document and slid it across the table. That's a detailed breakdown of what she spent the money on. The apartment she can't afford, the car, the clothes, the trips to Miami and Los Angeles. Even most of her blog followers were purchased. The whole thing is a house of cards built on your money, Dad. My father looked at Melissa like he was seeing her for the first time. I gave you everything, he said quietly. Everything you ever wanted. Why would you do this? Melissa's eyes filled with tears, but for once, they didn't work. Because it was never enough. You gave me attention, but Rachel got to be independent. She got to build something real. I just wanted. You wanted to look successful without doing the work, I said. You wanted the appearance of earning things while actually stealing them. My mother was crying now, quiet tears running down her face as she stared at the documents in front of her. Derek stood up. I should go. This is a family matter. Sit down, my father said, and Derek sat immediately. You knew about this, didn't you? I suspected the money wasn't from the blog, but Melissa said you were helping her. Get out, my father said. Now. Derek left without another word. If you've ever had to expose a painful truth to protect what's right, drop a comment. This is the hardest part of the story. My father turned back to Melissa. How much of it can you pay back? She looked down at her plate. I don't know. Maybe 50,000? The rest is already spent. So you stole money you can't return to buy a lifestyle you can't afford. He closed the folder with a sharp snap. You're off the succession plan. Effective immediately. And you'll be signing a confession and a repayment agreement, or I'm pressing charges. Dad, please. You're lucky I don't call the police right now, he said. The only reason I'm not is because you're my daughter and your mother is sitting right here. But make no mistake, Melissa. This is over. He turned to look at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Respect. Rachel, he said, his voice rough. I owe you an apology. A massive apology. Yes, I said simply. You do. My parents asked me to come back to the house after dinner. Melissa left in an Uber, crying, her perfect image shattered on a Saturday night in Denver. We sat in my father's office, the same room where he'd announced Melissa's inheritance 3 months earlier. How long have you known? He asked. About 2 months. I needed to be certain before I said anything. He nodded slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I've been blind. Worse than blind. I've been unfair to you your entire life, and I don't have a good excuse for it. My mother touched his arm. We both have. Rachel, we're so sorry. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. The apology, the recognition, the validation I'd craved since childhood. But now that it was here, I just felt tired. I don't understand why, I said quietly. I did everything right. I worked hard, got good grades, built a career. What did I do wrong? My father was quiet for a long moment. Nothing. You did nothing wrong. That's what makes this so much worse. Melissa reminded me of myself when I was young, charismatic, full of big dreams, a little reckless. I thought I could guide her to success. But you? You were already successful. You didn't need me. I always needed you, I said, and my voice cracked. I just needed you to see me. My mother started crying again. The company, my father said finally. If you want it, it's yours. Not as a consolation prize, but because you're the only one qualified to run it. You're the only one who actually earned it. I went back to my hotel that night and sat on the bed, staring at the Denver skyline through the window. Did I want Foster Commercial Properties? Did I want to leave Chicago, leave the career I'd built, and come back to Denver to run my father's company? A month ago, the answer would have been yes without hesitation. But now, holding all the cards, having finally won my father's respect, I realized something important. I didn't need his company to prove my worth. I'd already proven it. To myself, to my colleagues, to everyone who mattered. The only person who hadn't seen it was him, and that was his failing, not mine. I called him the next morning. I appreciate the offer, Dad. But I'm going to pass. Silence on the other end of the line. I have a career I love in Chicago, I continued. I've built something of my own, something I'm proud of. I don't need to inherit your success. I've created my own. I understand, he said quietly. What should I do with the company? Sell it. Retire like Mom wants you to. Or hire a professional management team. But don't give it to someone just because they're family. Give it to someone who's earned it. Like you did with Melissa's crimes? Exactly like that. Melissa signed the confession and repayment agreement. She's working 2 jobs now, retail during the day, bartending at night, to pay back what she stole. Her blog is deleted, her followers gone, her lifestyle stripped down to reality. My father sold Foster Commercial Properties to a Denver-based real estate investment firm for $9.2 million. He and my mother are planning a long retirement, traveling to all the places they never had time to visit. And me? I got promoted to vice president at my firm in Chicago. I earned it through late nights, successful campaigns, and a reputation for thoroughness that apparently extends beyond marketing. My father calls me once a week now. We talk about real things, my projects, his retirement plans, the books he's reading. He asks my advice, listens to my opinions, and treats me like the competent adult I've always been. It's not the relationship I wanted as a child, but it's the one I have as an adult. And maybe that's enough. Subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when the people who should value you most have failed to see it. Here's what I learned from all of this. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most will still fail to see your value. They'll praise others while overlooking your achievements. They'll give credit to the undeserving while ignoring your hard work. And you have 2 choices. You can keep trying to prove yourself to them, chasing validation that may never come. Or you can prove yourself to yourself, build a life you're proud of, and let your success speak for itself. I spent 32 years trying to earn my father's approval. In the end, I got it, but only after I stopped needing it. The revenge wasn't in exposing Melissa, though that needed to happen. The revenge was in realizing that I'd already won. I'd built a life, a career, and a sense of self-worth that didn't depend on anyone's opinion but my own. My father laughed and said my sister earned everything on her own, unlike me. He was right about one thing. Unlike me, she didn't earn anything. She stole it. But I earned everything I have. Every degree, every promotion, every dollar in my bank account came from my own hard work and determination. And that's something no one can ever take away from me. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued by the people who should have seen your worth, leave a comment below. Tell me your story. You're not alone in this. And remember, your value isn't determined by who recognizes it. It's determined by what you build, what you create, and how you show up for yourself every single day. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of resilience and justice, and I'll see you in the next one.